I never thought office gossip could ruin me. But I learned the hard way just how fast whispers can spread and change everything. When I first joined the company, I was so proud. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it felt like stability, like something I could finally build a life around. I remember walking into that office for the first time, clutching a new notebook, wearing the blazer I bought on sale at Macy's, thinking I looked so professional. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to do well. And at first, everything seemed fine. I kept my head down, worked hard, and even stayed late a few times just to make sure I didn't miss deadlines. But there was one person who seemed to watch me with this sharp, evaluating look. My co-worker, Jenna. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was older than me, had been at the company longer, and carried herself like she owned the place. She had this fake sweetness in her voice, like she was always complimenting people, but never really meant it. She'd say things like, "Oh, you look so put together today." But her eyes would scan you up and down like she was searching for flaws. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being insecure. The first time I noticed something was off was during lunch. I had packed leftovers from the night before. Spaghetti with too much garlic, I'll admit. When I sat down in the break room, a couple of my co-workers giggled and looked at me strangely. I smiled politely, but the way they whispered to each other made me uncomfortable. Later that afternoon, another co-worker jokingly asked if I was trying to ward off vampires. It seemed harmless, but something in my gut told me Jenna had said something. Still, I tried to laugh along. I didn't want to make enemies. Weeks passed and little things started piling up. People began treating me differently. Conversations would stop when I walked into the room. I'd catch people exchanging glances and stifling laughs. I'd sit at my desk, pretending to be buried in work, but my chest would ache with the weight of feeling excluded. It reminded me of high school, when rumours about me spread because I didn't go to a party. I thought I'd left that kind of immaturity behind. But suddenly it felt like I was 15 again, sitting alone at lunch, wondering what was being said about me. One day, I overheard two co-workers in the hallway. They didn't see me, but I caught the words desperate and pathetic paired with my name. My face burned, my stomach twisted, and I had to lock myself in the restroom just to keep from crying. I stared at myself in the mirror, cheeks flushed, eyes glassy, whispering to myself, what did I do wrong? I had no answer. All I knew was that someone was feeding lies about me, and everyone else was eating them up. I started to pay closer attention, and the pattern became clear. Every time Jenna was around, the atmosphere shifted. She'd flash her saccharine smile. Then later I'd hear a twisted version of something I'd said. Once, I mentioned to her that I was single and focusing on my career. Days later, a co-worker casually asked me how my desperate hunt for a boyfriend was going. Another time, I told Jenna I was saving up to move into my own apartment. The next week, someone joked about how I was too broke to afford decent furniture. Each rumour was like a little dagger, not sharp enough to kill me outright, but deep enough to bleed me slowly. At night I'd go home, collapse on my couch and replay everything in my head. I stopped enjoying my favourite shows, stopped calling my friends, because all I could think about was work and how much I dreaded walking into that office the next day. I tried to convince myself it wasn't a big deal, that I could ignore it, but the truth is it was eating away at me. Every laugh I heard felt like it was at my expense. Every whisper was about me. My confidence started to crack, and then one morning, everything escalated. That morning I walked into the office and felt every eye on me. Not in the usual polite way, but like they were all in on some joke I didn't know yet. I set my coffee down at my desk, pretending not to notice, but the whispers were louder than usual. My stomach dropped. Within an hour, I found out why. A co-worker I was somewhat friendly with, Brian, leaned over and asked in a half-whisper if it was true that I'd been caught drunk at a bar the night before and showed up late because I'd been hungover. My jaw nearly hit the floor. It wasn't true at all. I hadn't even gone out. I'd spent the night at home with takeout and a movie. I stammered out a denial, but his smirk told me he didn't really believe me. It felt like the ground was opening beneath my feet. I knew immediately where it came from, Jenna. The way she looked at me across the room with that smug tilt of her head was enough to confirm it. She had escalated from petty jokes to outright lies. And the worst part was that people believed her. After that, my reputation at work nosedived. Suddenly, I wasn't the reliable hard worker anymore. I was the mess who couldn't handle herself. Little opportunities I used to get were given to others. I noticed emails that used to include me now left me out. My boss didn't confront me directly, but I saw the doubt in his eyes when I spoke up in meetings, as if he was questioning my credibility. That destroyed me more than the gossip itself, because I'd worked so hard to be taken seriously. I remember sitting in my car during lunch breaks just to cry where no one could see me. I'd blast the AC and stare at the steering wheel, asking myself why Jenna had chosen me as her target. I replayed every interaction, every smile, every conversation, wondering if I had said something to offend her, but nothing made sense. She thrived on tearing me down, and I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't like I had threatened her job. I wasn't gunning for her position. I just wanted to do my work in peace. Yet the more I tried to stay quiet and avoid conflict, the bolder she became. She spread stories about me flirting with married co-workers, about me being lazy and only pretending to work late, even about me having financial problems so bad I borrowed money from people in the office. All lies, but when repeated enough times, lies start sounding like truth. People I thought were friends began to keep their distance. They'd stop inviting me to lunch, stop chatting at my desk. I became the outsider, the shadow sitting at her computer, typing furiously to prove her worth. While the office around me buzzed with laughter I wasn't part of, it chipped away at my sense of self. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, insomnia wrapping me up in its claws. I'd think about quitting, about just walking away to save my sanity. But then anger would rise in me. Why should I leave? Why should she win? I had done nothing wrong. I thought back to being a teenager again, when a so-called friend spread a rumour that I cheated on a test. Even though I hadn't, back then I stayed quiet and let it pass, but it haunted me for years. This time, I promised myself I wouldn't stay silent. I wouldn't let Jenna ruin me without a fight. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet, but I could feel something shifting inside me. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was the beginning of something sharper, something like resolve. The shift inside me started small, like a quiet voice whispering that I didn't have to take this anymore. I held on to that thought during the next few days, even as the rumours spread like wildfire. One afternoon, I overheard Jenna in the break room with 2 other women, her voice loud enough to carry. She was saying that I had begged a supervisor for a ride home because I couldn't afford gas. My hands trembled as I gripped my water bottle, listening to their laughter echo off the walls. I wanted to scream, to storm in and defend myself, but instead I walked back to my desk with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I knew I couldn't keep ignoring it. That night I lay awake, staring at the cracks in my ceiling, and thought about every moment she had humiliated me. The snide remarks, the fake compliments, the way she smiled at me just before unleashing another lie. I remembered how in high school I let things slide, thinking it was easier to avoid drama. But all that did was teach people I was an easy target. I swore this time would be different. So I began paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed how Jenna always leaned too close to the manager, how she exaggerated her accomplishments, how she dropped little comments about others too, just not as viciously as she did with me. She thrived on being the one everyone turned to, the one who knew everything, and it dawned on me that her power came from people believing her. If I could show them the truth, she'd lose that grip. The idea terrified me. I wasn't confrontational by nature, but the more I thought about it, the more determined I became. I started writing down every rumour I heard, keeping a timeline of who said what and when. I saved emails and Slack messages where she twisted my words. It felt sneaky, but I told myself it wasn't revenge. It was survival. The next time she spread a rumour, I'd be ready. I imagined standing in front of everyone and finally exposing her lies. That vision fueled me during the long days when I felt like crumbling. I even practiced in the mirror, whispering the words I might one day say out loud. It gave me strength, even if I wasn't there yet. The turning point came when a project I worked on for weeks suddenly got reassigned. My boss said Jenna had mentioned I was too overwhelmed and might miss deadlines. Hearing that nearly broke me. But instead of crying in my car this time, I clenched my fists and thought, this is it. She just crossed the line and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. When my project was taken from me because of her lies, something inside me snapped. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the email from my boss that said Jenna would help out, since I was supposedly swamped. My hands shook with rage. That project was my chance to prove myself, and she had stolen it with nothing more than a whisper. I forced myself to breathe, but every inhale burned. For the rest of the day, I moved like a ghost through the office. Silent but watchful, studying her. Jenna laughed with her little circle, flipping her hair, acting like she was the star of the show. Every fake smile she gave me felt like another slap. That night, I went home and spread my notes across the kitchen table. Page after page of rumours, dates, small details I had collected. I highlighted connections, circled names, built a map of how her lies travelled. It almost looked like a crime board from one of those detective shows, and in a way, it was. She was committing character assassination, and I was the only one gathering evidence. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control. I even slept better that night, clutching the notebook like a shield. The next morning, I walked into work with new resolve. I wasn't ready to confront her yet, but I started testing the waters. When co-workers made little jokes at my expense, I calmly asked, "Where did you hear that?" Most of the time they froze, glanced at each other and muttered Jenna's name. That gave me confidence. It proved what I already knew. She was the source. I began collecting witnesses without them even realising. Every slip of the tongue, every accidental confession went into my notebook. At lunch, I sat quietly, pretending to scroll on my phone, but my ears caught everything. It amazed me how careless people were, how quickly they believed the loudest voice. Still, part of me ached with loneliness. I missed being included, missed laughing without fear. Some nights I cried while brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection and wondering if I was turning into someone bitter. But then I would remember the humiliation, the way my boss looked at me differently, and my sadness hardened back into determination. I wasn't bitter, I told myself. I was fighting back, and when the opportunity came, I would strike in a way she never saw coming. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Our department had a meeting scheduled to review quarterly progress, and everyone was required to present their contributions. I spent hours preparing slides, determined to show the work I had done, even after Jenna stole credit for the project. perfect. The morning of the meeting, I felt sick to my stomach, but I straightened my blazer, applied a little extra mascara, and told myself I had to be strong. When it was Jenna's turn to speak, she strutted to the front like she owned the room. Her voice dripped with confidence as she presented results I recognized as mine. She even used phrases from my emails, word for word. My chest tightened with rage. I gripped my pen so hard it nearly snapped. When she finished, the room applauded politely, and she glanced at me with that smirk, daring me to say something. My turn came, and I stood up with shaky hands, but my voice was steady. I presented my own slides, carefully pointing out the processes and strategies I had developed. I saw confusion flicker across a few faces, then recognition. They knew whose work it really was. Jenna shifted in her seat, crossing her arms, eyes narrowing. When I finished, there was an awkward silence, then scattered applause. My boss cleared his throat and said it was good to see collaboration in action. Collaboration, that word stung, but it also planted a seed. If he thought it was teamwork, then maybe I could use that angle to show how much she had twisted. After the meeting, I overheard Jenna in the hallway, telling someone that I was trying to steal her spotlight. My fists clenched, but instead of confronting her, I wrote it down in my notebook. More evidence, more proof. I realised that patience was my weapon. If I exposed her too soon, she could spin it and make me look like the jealous one. But if I waited, if I collected enough to show a clear pattern, then she would have no way out. That night at home, I poured myself a glass of cheap wine and sat at my kitchen table, reviewing everything I had gathered. I could almost feel the moment drawing closer. The moment when I would finally tear down the mask she wore. For the first time in weeks, I smiled to myself, not because the pain was gone, but because I finally believed I could win. The more I prepared myself, the more I started noticing cracks in Jenna's perfect facade. She was good at manipulating people, but even the best liars slip up eventually. One morning, I caught her in the copy room, talking to another co-worker, boasting about how easy it was to guide the narrative in the office. Her exact words were, "People believe what you tell them if you act confident enough." She laughed like it was a game. I froze in the hallway, my stomach twisting, but my phone was already in my hand. I pressed record without thinking, capturing every word. When I played it back later in my car, I realised I had my first real weapon. It wasn't just my word against hers anymore. For days after that, I was hyper-aware, listening for every slip. I didn't confront her, didn't even make eye contact, which probably made her think she had completely broken me. That was fine by me. Let her think she'd won. In truth, I was building my case. I started organising my notes into a neat file, labelling dates, names, even including screenshots of group chats where people repeated her lies. I knew that if I presented this at the right time, it would be undeniable. But even with this plan forming, I couldn't shake the loneliness. Walking into the office every day still felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone had already decided I was the villain. I'd sit at my desk with my headphones in, pretending to focus on spreadsheets while their laughter echoed like a chorus, reminding me I didn't belong. Some nights, I'd collapse on my bed and wonder if it was worth it. Maybe quitting would be easier. Maybe walking away would give me peace. But then I'd think about that recording, about her smug smile, and I'd feel the fire in my chest again. I couldn't let her destroy me. Not again, not like high school. I owed it to myself to fight. I began to plan not just how to reveal her, but when. Timing was everything. If I struck too early, she'd twist it. If I waited too long, I'd drown. The upcoming company retreat seemed perfect. Everyone would be there, including higher management. If I played it right, I could finally show them who she really was. The thought both terrified and thrilled me. I was scared of standing up, of making myself vulnerable, but I was even more scared of staying silent and letting her win forever. The company retreat was scheduled at a hotel conference centre about an hour outside the city, and the days leading up to it, I felt my nerves building like static electricity. I packed my bag carefully, making sure to bring my notes and a copy of the recording on a flash drive I kept hidden in a side pocket. On the drive there, I rehearsed what I might say, how I might reveal everything if the moment presented itself. My palms were sweaty against the steering wheel, but underneath the fear was determination. When we arrived, the atmosphere was casual, people chatting and laughing as if we were all friends outside the office politics. I envied how easy it seemed for them, while I felt the weight of secrets pressing on my chest. Jenna, of course, was in the centre of everything, her voice carrying across the lobby, her laughter echoing as she joked with the managers. She looked radiant in her tailored blazer, every inch the confident professional. I wondered if anyone else saw through it, or if I was the only one. During the first group session, we were asked to share accomplishments and challenges from the past quarter. My heart pounded as people went around the room. When it was Jenna's turn, she stood up and once again paraded work that wasn't hers. She phrased things so carefully, taking just enough credit while slipping in digs about how she had to step up when others couldn't keep up. I could feel eyes shifting toward me, subtle but cutting. My chest burned, but I stayed still, taking notes, recording every word. When it was my turn, I forced myself to breathe and spoke clearly, outlining the processes I had developed, pointing to data I had personally compiled. I didn't accuse her, not yet, but I made sure to emphasize the hours and dedication I had poured into my tasks. A few people looked surprised. One even frowned as if connecting dots. That reaction gave me strength. Later, during dinner, I sat at a table near the back, picking at my food, while Jenna held court at the centre table. I caught fragments of her conversation, more little jabs about me, calling me fragile and unreliable. My fists clenched under the tablecloth. I thought about standing up right then and playing the recording for everyone to hear, but I knew it wasn't the right moment. I needed maximum impact, a place where no one could dismiss it as drama. So I waited, even though it tore me up inside. That night in my hotel room, I lay awake listening to the hum of the air conditioner, rehearsing again and again what I would say. I imagined their faces when they finally saw her for who she was. The thought carried me into restless sleep, my flash drive hidden under my pillow, like a secret weapon waiting to be unleashed. The second day of the retreat started with team-building exercises, silly games meant to make us trust each other. Though the irony wasn't lost on me, I went through the motions, plastering on a polite smile, while inside I seethed. Jenna was in her element, cracking jokes, volunteering for every activity, making sure the managers noticed her. Watching her felt like watching a stage performance, and everyone else was the audience eating it up. But I knew the truth, and the knowledge kept me steady. During one exercise, we were paired off to share fun facts about ourselves. And of course, Jenna found her way into my circle. She leaned in close, her voice sugary sweet, and whispered something only I could hear. "You really should quit before you embarrass yourself further." My stomach lurched, but I forced myself to keep a calm expression. Out loud, I simply said my fun fact was that I once hiked a mountain alone, which was true, though the real climb I was facing now felt much harder. She smiled, knowing she'd unsettled me, but she had no idea how much stronger I felt holding on to my evidence. That evening, we had a large group dinner with an open mic session where people could share stories or thank their teammates. I knew this was my chance. I sat at my table, heart pounding, palms sweating, waiting for the courage to rise. One by one, people spoke, voices cheerful, laughter filling the room. Then Jenna stood, of course, launching into a speech about teamwork and how she often had to carry extra weight when others couldn't handle the pressure. The words were like knives, each one aimed at me, but they also ignited the spark I'd been waiting for. When she sat down, I stood up. My legs trembled, but my voice was clear. I thanked the team for their efforts, then calmly explained that I had something to share. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the flash drive, and asked the facilitator if I could play a short clip. There was curiosity in the room, murmurs of interest. When the recording began to play, Jenna's voice filled the speakers, laughing as she bragged about how easy it was to manipulate people, about how confidence made lies sound like truth. The room went dead silent. Every face turned toward her. She froze, colour draining from her cheeks. For a moment, no one moved. The silence heavier than any applause. My heart hammered, but I kept my chin high. I finally felt like the victim's mask was gone, replaced with the truth for everyone to see. The silence after the recording ended felt endless, and in that silence, I saw Jenna's carefully built image begin to crumble. She stammered, trying to laugh it off, saying it was taken out of context, just a joke. But the damage was already done. People glanced at each other with raised brows, some whispering, others staring at her like they were seeing her for the first time. My boss finally broke the silence by clearing his throat and asking if I had more to add. My hands trembled as I pulled out my notebook and explained that for months I had been documenting the rumours, the lies, and the small humiliations. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I just laid it all out in a calm voice, turning page after page to show the pattern. At first my voice shook, but as I spoke, strength grew inside me. I saw nods around the room, people realising how many times they had repeated things without questioning their source. Jenna sat rigid, her smile gone, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. She tried to interrupt, but each word I spoke seemed to push her further back into the shadows. By the time I finished, the room was buzzing with a different kind of whisper, one not aimed at me, but at her. The facilitator ended the session awkwardly, saying management would review the matter, but I could already feel the shift. People approached me afterward, quietly admitting they had heard things but never knew where they started. Some apologised, some looked guilty. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. That night in my hotel room, I cried, but not from sadness. The tears came from release, from the heavy weight finally lifting off my chest. I thought I would feel triumphant, but mostly I felt exhausted. It was like running a marathon on broken legs, finally crossing the finish line and collapsing. The next morning, Jenna avoided me completely. She sat at a different table during breakfast, her laughter muted, her eyes downcast. People who once flocked to her now kept their distance. It was surreal to watch the shift happen so quickly. I didn't gloat, though part of me wanted to. I simply sipped my coffee, savouring the quiet for the first time in months. I knew it wasn't over yet, that there would be fallout when we returned to the office. But for the first time, I believed I might actually come out of this stronger than before. When we returned to the office after the retreat, the atmosphere was completely different. The same people who once laughed behind my back now looked at me with hesitation, even respect. A few co-workers stopped by my desk with awkward smiles, asking how my weekend had been, as if nothing had happened, but I could see the guilt in their eyes. It was strange, like stepping into a parallel universe where I wasn't the outcast anymore. Jenna, on the other hand, seemed smaller somehow. She no longer strutted down the hallway with her head high, and the circle of people who used to orbit around her kept their distance. She still tried, of course. She sent overly cheerful emails, complimented people a little too loudly, but the magic was gone. The confidence that once made everyone believe her was cracked, and people weren't buying it anymore. I should have felt satisfied, but a part of me struggled with the emptiness that came after the fight. For so long, my life revolved around the torment she caused, the constant pressure of surviving each day under her lies. With that pressure lifting, I was left with exhaustion and questions. Who was I now that I wasn't her victim? Could I trust these people again? The ones who believed her so easily. I tried to focus on my work, pouring myself into projects, and slowly the recognition came. My boss started praising my efforts more openly, giving me responsibilities he once hesitated to assign. It felt good. But I also noticed the careful way he avoided mentioning what had happened, as if pretending it hadn't existed would erase the stain. For me, though, it would never be erased. I carried the memories of sitting in my car crying, of walking into rooms where laughter died down, of staring at my ceiling wondering if I should just give up. Those scars didn't vanish just because Jenna had been exposed. One afternoon, weeks later, I caught her alone in the break room. She looked tired, her makeup not hiding the dark circles under her eyes. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. She glanced at me, then quickly looked away, mumbling a greeting. I realised in that moment that I had a choice. I could lash out, remind her of everything she had done, or I could simply walk away. I chose the latter because deep down I knew her punishment wasn't my words. It was the silence she now faced, the absence of the power she once held. Leaving her standing there alone felt like the sweetest kind of revenge. Even after Jenna's power was gone, I couldn't help but wrestle with the aftermath. Some mornings I would sit in my car outside the office, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if I even wanted to walk inside. The building itself felt different now, the walls less threatening, but my body still carried the memory of dread. Trauma doesn't vanish overnight, even when justice is served. Slowly, though, I started reclaiming pieces of myself. I decorated my desk with a small plant, a bright green pothos, and a framed photo of me with my best friend, as if to remind myself I belonged there. I joined a few co-workers for lunch again, cautiously at first, then with more ease when I realised they genuinely wanted me there. Some admitted they had felt pressured to go along with Jenna, that her confidence made them doubt themselves. Hearing that didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me see the bigger picture. Jenna wasn't powerful because she was smart or talented. She was powerful because everyone else gave her their silence. That realization changed something in me. I promised myself never again to stay quiet when someone tried to tear me down. One Friday afternoon, I was leaving the office when I overheard two new hires whispering about another co-worker. The old me might have ignored it, but this time I stopped, looked at them directly and said, "Be careful. Words can do more damage than you think." Their surprised faces reminded me of how easy it is to slip into the same cycle. I walked out of the building with my head high, feeling like I had finally broken free. As for Jenna, her decline was steady and visible. She lost the favour of the managers, projects slipped from her grasp, and within a few months she transferred to another branch. No goodbye party, no fond words, just a quiet exit. When I heard the news, I didn't celebrate. I just sat at my desk, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me proving to myself that I had strength I never realised. She tried to destroy me, but in the end, she revealed a side of me I never knew I had. The side that fights back, the side that refuses to break. In the weeks after Jenna's departure, I noticed how quiet the office felt, almost peaceful. The tension that once hung in the air was gone, replaced by a sense of normalcy I hadn't felt in so long. People stopped whispering when I entered rooms, and for the first time I could focus entirely on my work, without wondering who was talking about me behind my back. Still, I carried the lessons with me. There were moments when I would catch myself scanning faces, looking for signs of betrayal, but then I would remind myself that I wasn't powerless anymore. I had learned how to fight, how to stand my ground, even when it terrified me. That was the real victory. One evening, as I packed up my desk, I thought about everything that had happened. The long nights crying in my car, the sting of being left out, the humiliation of being doubted, and that the moment I finally stood up and exposed her lies. I thought about how close I had come to quitting, how easy it would have been to walk away, but how much stronger I felt because I hadn't. My revenge hadn't been some dramatic outburst or cruel words. It was simply showing the truth, stripping away her mask until she was left standing in the ruins of her own lies. And maybe that was the sweetest form of justice, because it wasn't me who destroyed her. It was her own arrogance, her own confidence in the belief that she could twist reality forever. I was just the mirror reflecting it back. Sitting there in the empty office, I realised I didn't hate her anymore. What I felt was something different, something almost like pity. She had built her life on tearing others down, and in the end, she was left with nothing. I had nearly let her take me with her, but instead I walked away stronger. If there's one thing I took from that nightmare, it's that silence is the greatest weapon bullies have. The moment you break it, the moment you speak your truth, their power crumbles. I learned to never let myself be silenced again. So yes, my co-worker spread rumours about me, and yes, she regretted it. But more importantly, I came out of it knowing that my voice matters, that I can survive being broken down and still rise again. And that more than anything is the revenge she can never take from me.